Okay, we are live. All right, we'll wait a few minutes for a couple more people to jump on. There we go. We got some dancing going on. Got the disco in the background. Got the disco going on. Okay, well, before I get started here, I was just called and reprimanded by a friend of mine. So I must say, Bob Mudrock, happy belated birthday, Bob Mudrock. I am so sorry I missed your birthday on May 30th. Shame on me, but never forget, my birthday is March 16th. I'll give you my address where you can mail my gifts. Okay, so on that note, I think we may have one viewer on the line now. Okay, listen, Facebook Live, it's 3 o'clock. Linda Schulte, broker owner of Schulte Realty. I don't know if I should leave my glasses on. I can see without my glasses, by the way, because I have contact lenses in. We're here at 3 o'clock on Thursday. We're doing the Facebook Live, and we're doing things about home ownership, buying and selling homes, what's going on in the market, talk to some local non-for-profits. And since we just started hurricane season, I thought it would be a great idea for us to talk with somebody who deals with insurance and has been doing it since 1987.
Yes.
Working in the insurance world. So we've got Kim Adams. She's Kim M. Adams, P.LLC, with Kim Adams Law Firm. She's been a public adjuster since 1997. Before that, she was working with many insurance companies. So she learned from the insurance companies directly since 1987 to 97. She's a claim adjuster, a claims examiner, and a catastrophe adjuster. So when there's a catastrophe, she was out there working on the claims. And an attorney since 2005. She's a member of the Central Florida Trial Lawyers Association, and she's a member of the Florida Justice Association. And she has been an expert witness in bad faith claims settlement practices. So it sounds like you're very well qualified to talk about insurance, Kim. Is that correct?
I hope so.
I got you on the stand. Do you promise to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Okay. All right. So listen, I know you're a public adjuster and an attorney, but you were a public adjuster first. And so one of the things I get asked a lot when I suggest something like, hey, you had a claim in your house, why don't you give a public adjuster a call first? A lot of people say to me, well, I'm going to call the insurance company. They have adjusters. I'm like, no. This is a public adjuster. So why don't I let you, the expert, you tell us what's the difference between a public adjuster and the adjuster that they have at the insurance company?
Okay. Thank you, Linda, for that fabulous introduction. I want to thank you also for having me on and having the various Facebook Lives that you do, which educate the public on the various issues that we have in the state of Florida. The difference between a public adjuster and an insurance adjuster. Well, first of all, there's two types of insurance company adjusters. You have the adjusters that are called staff adjusters. They are hired, employed full-time by the insurance company that you have. And then you have what's called an independent insurance adjuster, which is hired by third-party vendors, independent adjusting companies that the insurance company contracts out. So they're like a contract adjuster. A public adjuster would be your adjuster. They're handling the claim. They're acting as an advocate for you, making sure you get all that you're entitled to under the policy and making sure they're preparing the claim properly and addressing all the issues in your claim to get you the best possible settlement. So the difference between an independent and a staff adjuster is they're working for the insurance company and the public adjuster works for you.
Okay, gotcha. So the public adjuster is working for you. So do you have a suggestion, like say somebody does have a claim on their house, whether it's a slip and fall, they think they have roof damage, or it's something from a storm. Should they reach out to insurance first, or do you think it's better they call a public adjuster first? What's your opinion on that?
Well, a slip and fall, you slipped that in there. That's a different type of
I'm funny.
Okay? That's a different type of claim. That's a liability claim for which you would not need a public adjuster for, and public adjusters actually cannot handle injury claims. So they're not licensed by the state of Florida to do that. I also want to give you this caveat. All adjusters in the state of Florida have to be licensed. So if you do hire a public adjuster, make sure you check their license and their qualifications. In terms of what you should do first after you have a claim, you should first make sure you have a claim, make sure you have damage, and you should call your insurance company first. That's the first thing you should do. Depending on the claim, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack from my fellow PA brethrens on this, but depending on the claim, you might want to see what the carrier does for you, because a PA obviously does not work for free. They will charge a percentage of the claim. Some of the percent levels are dependent or governed by the Florida statute, depending on what type of claim it is. If it's a hurricane claim, named storm, they can only charge on homeowners' losses 10%. That's the maximum for up to a year after the storm. After that, I believe the limit is 20%. So if you have a very simple, straightforward claim, it might be better to just go it on your own and see if you can get it resolved with the carrier. That said, I was explaining to you about independent adjusters. A lot of the independent adjusters have very little, especially when there's a hurricane situation, because they're bringing in so many adjusters from all over the United States. There are a lot of them that really don't have a lot of experience and overlook a lot of the damage. So that said, though, you can get the settlement from the insurance company and then have the PA come in and get what's left on the table, as it were. So
I would ask you a question. You mentioned to make sure your PA is licensed.
Mm-hmm.
How would somebody verify licensing for a PA? And PA is a public adjuster. How would somebody verify someone's licensed as a PA?
What you would want to do is you want to go to the Florida Department of Financial Services website.
Okay.
And there should be a link there. I can't remember.
I can provide the link to everybody.
Yeah, just go to that website, the Florida Department of Financial Services, FLDFS, and you can check a licensee status.
Okay, good. So just before I jump into the next area of this, just want to remind everybody to stay tuned towards the end of this, because Kim's going to give one of the most important pieces of advice. If you're a policy owner on insurance and you do have something that occurs with your property. So do stay tuned.
The bane of my existence.
It's an important little nugget of information. So stay tuned on that. You did mention experience as well, which is important. We always talk about that as well with real estate. Make sure you find a licensed and experienced real estate agent. So for experience, how you have, what is it, 30 years?
33 years. Like you said, I started out handwriting estimates and running a tape. That's how much of a dinosaur I am, and I'm really dating myself there. Most of the adjusters today use a computer to just write, an estimate or whatever. Most of them have not really read an insurance policy, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But let me get back to the independent adjuster versus the staff adjuster.
Sure, go ahead.
Adjuster that comes out, you have to understand, when they come out after a storm, they have zero authority to bind the insurance company. So all they're there to do is to be the eyes and ears of the carrier. They go out and they take pictures, they write an estimate, the carrier looks it over. If it looks good, then they write you a check. They have no idea what your policy says for the most part. I mean, they get broad brush strokes of it and get some basic guidelines for different coverages. But for the most part, they don't know what the policy says. So that's why it's important to have an advocate on your side, a public adjuster, who, if they're doing their job, should immediately request a copy of the policy and go over that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you're getting all the coverage available to you under it.
Okay, gotcha. So one of the things I heard you say earlier too is you said that the PA should read the policy. So, and you said a lot of people don't, a lot of PAs don't. So that actually is going to lead me into what we were trying to talk about, since we're in hurricane season, is what to do before the storm. during the storm and after the storm. So we were talking just a little bit ago about that, and you always suggest, and I know I talked to an insurance broker here locally, and she always says, let's look at your policy now. Look at your policy now. If you need to add it on now. And this is before a storm is ever named out there. We're still in the, if you will, we're still roasting the coffee beans. So what should people be doing now before the storm is even here or is even brewing out there? What's your suggestions?
Okay. So a lot of people, when I get clients, they have no idea what coverages they had. They don't know how to read a policy. And honestly, most policies are fairly daunting to read, but there are some things that you can check. And the things that you can check on your policy are the different coverages and the levels of coverage that you have. So what you want to check, first of all, is how much you have different coverages. You have coverage A, which is your dwelling, which is the house. You have coverage C, which is the contents within your house. And then you have what's called additional living expense coverage D. You want to make sure you got adequate quick coverage for that, for all three of those. The other thing you want to check is your deductible. Now, you have your regular deductible, and most policyholders in Florida know this. If there's any lookers or watchers out there outside of the state of Florida, this is unique to Florida and maybe Texas because of the nature of the amount of hurricanes that we get. But the hurricane deductible is typically a percentage of your coverage A. That's why it's important to know what your coverage A is. So if you have a $250,000 policy and your deductible is 2%, your deductible for any hurricane claim that comes through is going to be $5,000. And what's a deductible? The deductible is the first amount of the claim that you're going to be responsible for. So if your claim is less than $5,000, the insurance company's not going to write a check to you. If it's more than $5,000, they'll deduct the $5,000 from the amount of the claim and write the check for the balance.
Can I ask you a question about that deductible piece?
Yes.
So you just said if your deductible is $5,000, shouldn't somebody get an estimate of what the damages are prior to calling the insurance company? Because if it comes back and it's only $3,000, they should just take care of it rather than calling up and alerting the insurance company. Is that true?
It depends on the type of claim. That is true. You want to make sure you don't have a history of claims on your policy, which stays with your house, by the way.
Right.
So even after you sell a house, what happens is when you turn a claim in, it goes to a central database if your carrier insurance company subscribes to it, which most of them do. And so there's a record. So when I was working on the carrier side, I would get a claim and I would get this report. It was either a pillar report, which is for fires, or it was an ISO report. And that report would give a history of all the claims that were on that particular house. So the insurance company knows what claim history you've had on that. That becomes problematic. And this is something for Jackie or whoever your broker is, can explain better, because this is more underwriting inside baseball. I don't do that. But as I understand it, if you have a lot of history, particularly water damage in Florida, which typically results in mold, which is another coverage I was going to discuss next, you don't want that on the house. And so when you go to sell the house and the new buyers come in, they may have difficulty getting insurance. So you want to be careful about that. After a storm, you're typically going to have roof damage. Typically, it's going to require replacement of the roof. So I don't think after a hurricane, it's that big of a deal to turn a claim in most of the time. But listen, people are free to call my office, and I can talk you through all this stuff. I give free consultation. So if there's anything like that where you're wondering, should I turn a claim in or not, just call my office and we can talk about that.
What's your number?
My number, it's a good question. I never call my office, but I have my card here. It's 407-342-3188.
What was it again? 407?
Right, 407-342-3188. Or you can email me, whatever is more comfortable for you, at kim@kmalawyer.com.
Okay.
Kim at KMA Lawyer. So if you have a lot of damage, go ahead and turn the claim in. If you're on the fence about it, just give me a call. I'm happy to talk anybody through that. So
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, the other thing too. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Nope, you go.
The other thing, getting to coverages, you want to check the mold coverage. That's a huge issue in Florida because obviously after the storm comes through and the roof is torn up and the interior water damage and you're sitting there sometimes for weeks with the power off, no AC, what happens? When you've got wet drywall, you develop a mold issue, and mold can get very expensive to mitigate. So you want to check your mold coverage, and on almost every policy, it's an added coverage. It used to be built into the HO3 policies. It is no longer, or the commercial policies, it is no longer anymore. That as of about 12 or 14 years ago, all these carriers took the mold out, and now they added in exclusions in the policy for mold, but then you have to buy an extra endorsement for mold coverage. And the typical mold coverage is $10,000. That, depending on your loss, that will cover most mold cases. But I want to give a caveat there. If you have a severe loss, just understand that you may be out of pocket a lot if you don't have enough mold coverage. So check that. Then the other thing you want to check, and this is something that has sprouted up in the last, I would say 4 or 5 years. I've never seen this before on a homeowner's all risk policy, meaning everything's covered except what's excluded. Okay. So does your policy cover interior water damage if you do not have any wind damage to the exterior of the home, like a blown off shingle or a flashing that was compromised by the storm? I saw from Hurricane Irma, this was the first time I'd heard this, several of the local Florida carriers were writing wind-driven rain exclusions, meaning if you have the interior water damage and none of the exterior wind damage, that there would be no coverage for your interior water damage. So you want to check that and make sure that that's the policy for you. Are there any limits for water damage? Some policies limit, even though you have a covered loss, this is all we're going to pay. I just handled a case, I won't give the carrier, but I was helping out a friend of mine. His parents had a pretty significant water loss in their bathroom. That was covered, but they only had 10,000 limits for water damage. Well, that's way too low. So if they're going to limit the water damage, you want to, in my opinion, there's enough carriers out there that will write up to the dwelling limit. You want to get those carriers. I would not have a policy that limits water damage to $10,000 because that's the bulk of the claims that you're going to have. Another thing, just to wrap up, checking your policy. And again, you can call me and I can help anybody out if they have any questions on any of this stuff. Check your loss payees. So a loss payee is anybody that is going to be on the check when the claim check is issued. So loss payees are going to be the named insureds. So the husband and wife that are both on the policy, it'll be Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And another loss payee is going to be the mortgagee. If you've changed mortgage companies, you want to make sure that's up to date. And if you've paid off your mortgage, you want to make sure that the insurance company is aware that there is no mortgagee on the policy. Because there's nothing worse than dealing with a mortgagee clause that's wrong or in whatever way and trying to get the checks reissued. So those are the big highlights. Where you can find this when you go to review your policy is look at it's called the declarations page. Every policy has it. It's way at the beginning of the policy, and it lists all your coverage limits. And then typical homeowners forms will also have a checklist of coverage form, which follows it very closely. It's maybe the next document or maybe the document after that, the next page. So just check all that. Call your agent if you have any questions and make sure that you've got adequate coverage based on your needs and what you're willing to eat if you don't have enough coverage, because obviously the more coverage you have, the higher your premium is going to be as well. Mm-hmm. So those are just some things to think about.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you just mentioned call your agent as well. So that's something I always encourage. I work pretty much with Jackie Berkson over at LRA Insurance, and she's always willing to accept phone calls from people who have insurance with her or people who don't. She's always. That's why I like to work with people like you, Kim. I appreciate you. Like, hey, if somebody has a question, I probably it's not worth it for me to be hired by them, but let me help them out. That's what Jackie does as well. If you guys need any kind of connections to Jackie Berkson for insurance or with Kim, reach out to me. I'll be happy to connect you on that. Remember, stay tuned though, because we're going to have a little tidbit at the very end. That's going to be a really important piece of advice. And I wish Jackie would jump on here too, because I know she'd like to add into what we're going to talk about, I'm sure. So we talked about what to do before the storm. And this is what you want to do right now, guys. You want to make sure you're contacting and making sure you've got flood insurance, if you need mold insurance. And by all means, before you call the insurance company and say the MOLD, that 4-letter word, talk to somebody before you call and alert the world that there's an alleged mold. Mm-hmm.
Let me add to that. So this would be after the claim, right? Don't use the M word, the mold word. Because you have limitations, this is what happens. A lot of these adjusters will put a bunch of your claim under the mold coverage when it should have been under the water coverage, where you have a lot more coverage. So this is where a public adjuster or an attorney like me, by the way, there are very few attorneys who know how to read an estimate, let alone write one. I'm probably one out of all of them in Florida. I don't know any other attorney that knows how to write an estimate, but no, that's not true. There is a law firm down in South Florida.
Of course, in South Florida there is.
Attorneys, but we're rare. So what you want to do is you want to make sure this is part of what a public adjuster will do for you. They'll make sure they present it in the best possible light, in an accurate light, so that you get the most coverage available. So that's extremely important. And one of the downsides of not hiring somebody right off the bat is that you could inadvertently say something and the insurance company seizes on that. That's happened before. I've had to pull rabbits out of hats to undo a lot of erroneous things that policyholders inadvertently said.
Right.
But I'm able to do that, but it's just an extra hoop I have to jump through. So, but yes, the mold thing, that is a huge, huge issue. Since most of the policies have such a low limit, you want to make sure all of your claim, or as much of it, is under the water damage and not under the mold coverage.
Yeah. So. And water damage, and I don't know how we could talk about should or should you not have flood insurance, but I think we'll have to save that for another one because we're already about 22 minutes into this. Okay. So I want to jump into, I'm just going to go real quick about what to do. I've done enough of these about her. First of all, Florida native, that's me. So I've been through a bazillion million 106 hurricanes, living on Miami Beach to living in the inner areas of Orlando. And, I'll tell you, back in 2004, when we got hit with those 3, I'm like, we're in Orlando, piece of cake, not to worry. Oh boy, we needed to worry. But anyway, I'm no way saying that I am an expert on hurricane getting prepared for, but I think I know a thing or two. One of the things I always suggest to everybody, I think Kim can absolutely agree to this, is if a hurricane's coming, run around the home taking pictures of everything. How did the home look prior to a hurricane coming through, and do a video and emailing it to yourself, and maybe emailing it to a relative that's outside the area. And Kim, I know we talked about, you agree that's something more important to do, more so than boarding up a window potentially. But you also mentioned, oh my gosh, there was something about what to do after the storm. What was it? We were talking about it a little bit earlier. We talked about taking the videos.
Oh, you had asked me the question, do they need to have serial numbers and receipts and all that? No.
Yeah. It's good to have, but
not the original receipts, no. That's not a requirement under the policy. But you do have to, let me, this is extremely important as well, after, almost as important as what I'm going to say at the end. But, one thing you have to do, one of the duties under the policy, and if you don't do this, this could bar you from recovery on your claim. So this is extremely important. make sure you exhibit the damage to the adjuster, and the typical term in most policies is as often as reasonably required, or as often as we reasonably require, we being the insurance company.
Okay.
And the reason for that is you have a duty under the policy to show the damage and document the damage. The insurance company has their duties under the policy as well, but that is one of your duties. So you want to make sure that you exhibit the damaged property. Now, here's what happens after a storm. I've seen this time and again. The insurance company adjuster, whether it's the staff adjuster or the IA, and it's almost always going to be an IA, which, as I explained at the beginning of this, the IA has no authority to bind the insurance company. They don't work for the insurance company.
Can you tell us what IA is again? IA?
An independent adjuster.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Most of the insurance adjusters that come out are going to be independent adjusters after a hurricane. So they're going to say stuff. Don't listen to them ever. Don't listen to them ever. One of the things that I'll have clients who have a contents claim, and I'll say, great, where are the contents? Oh, the insurance adjuster said that I could throw them out. Don't ever throw your contents out or do any repairs to your home except to mitigate, to stop further damage. Do not do any repairs or throw contents out until you have that claim settled. So I can't tell you how many cases I've had. And then, of course, the client tells me, oh, well, the insurance company has pictures. I'm not going to rely on their documentation of your claim. So that is an extremely important point in terms of taking pictures. If you have the pictures of your contents beforehand, that's great. But then there becomes the issue of, did you have this at the time of the storm? All this stuff. It's just better. If you have a claim, just leave all the stuff there until the claim is resolved. But also do not listen to what the IA tells you. Don't take what they say verbatim.
Okay, so hold on to all your documentation.
Hold on to all your documentation. Hold on to all the damaged items that you're making claim for. If you're making claim for a television, hold on to it. Don't throw it away. Do not put it out to the curb.
I did not know that. That's a good tip there. That's a good tip. And we've got more tips at the end of this. Now, after the storm has come through, this is what's an important part of it. It's going to lead into what's that most important little tidbit of advice that Kim's going to give you. Is we already talked about making sure you hold on to the pictures, hold on to the equipment. What else do you suggest people do after the storm, whether it's a hurricane, a hailstorm, windstorm, etc.? What do you suggest that people do after the storm?
Are we getting to the big point right now? Because we're at 2 minutes, right? First of all, I want to. Can I interject one more thing before we cut off?
Absolutely.
Hurricane Irma. There is a 3-year statute of limitation to report a claim for Hurricane Irma. Now, Hurricane Irma occurred September 10th, 2017. The deadline's coming up September 10th, 2020. So if you have not reported your hurricane loss for Hurricane Irma, make sure you do that before September 10th. That's similarly for Hurricane Michael. If you have property up there, or if you're listening and you're up there, if you have not turned your claim in, that's the initial reporting. I think that loss occurred October 2018. 3 years from the date of loss is all you've got. If you don't do it by that date, then you're barred from having a claim. So there's that. The most important thing, here's what's going to happen after every storm. You are going to have roofers, contractors, everybody coming to your door, people galore telling you, I have worked with insurance companies for 10 years and I know how to handle the claim, and here, sign this form. Do not sign a form what the form's going to do is give them all your rights under the policy. It's called an assignment of benefits. You do not want to sign an assignment of benefits form. Why don't you want to do that? Because when you do that, they get all the claim dollars. And if they don't do the work properly, or worse, they skip town, you're out of luck. So don't ever, I would advocate never signing a document from any stranger that comes to your door anyway. You don't know who these people are, but certainly not on your insurance claim. So do not do that. Again, if you have any questions about what they're giving you to sign, hang on to it, call my office, send it to me, whatever, email it to me. I'm happy to go over it for you and explain what the ramifications of it are. But that's a general thing. Do not sign AOB contracts.
A question.
That is my number one pet peeve.
What's that?
That's my number one pet peeve.
Yeah.
People signing those forms, because I can't help you if no one can help you if they now become what's called the assignee under the policy. So because now they become the insured, right? They step in your shoes. So you don't want to do that.
Is there a time, like I know something happened to a neighbor one time where they had a flood in their home, and 3 o'clock in the morning, these people come out to do the work, and under duress, she was like stressed out, freaked. It's 4 in the morning. She signed it. Is there a time frame where they could rescind that AOB?
It is typically 3 days. Now, the legislature last July finally enacted legislation that made it more difficult for these AOB contracts to stand. There's a lot more stringent limitations on what they can do. It may have even increased the time to, I don't know this for sure, I'd have to read the statute, the time to rescind the contract, but it used to be 3 days. So, that is a common practice with water damage or water mitigation people. Most of those things go smoothly. They really do. Right. Because what happens is the insurance companies do business, they're dealing with these guys all the time because it's always the same actors, right? So they typically just write a check to the mitigation company, and then the rest of your claim is being handled the normal way. Where that becomes a problem is in this one case that I had, which had the $10,000 water damage and mold limit. And these guys unscrupulously, and I believe illegally, did some shady things on that. So that's the thing. In water mitigation instances, it's more common and there's less issues with that. Just make sure you're not signing your entire claim rights away just for what they're doing. So if they're there to do the dry out, make sure the AOB contract you're signing just says for dry out and not for the rest of your claim.
All right, it's really good, really, really good advice. So, so a couple things our takeaway from today is get your policy reviewed. Have it reviewed by your insurance broker, or give Kim a call. Maybe she can help you out. And we can find Kim Adams at 407-342-3188 or email at kim@kmalawyer.com. The other takeaway is take pictures of your home before a hurricane's coming this way. And I'll do a special thing about how to prepare your home and what to buy and so forth. I'll do something like that in about next week, or in the next week, I'll be doing something on that. And then the most important tidbit is if you're got any kind of storm damage or anything, an important takeaway is to what, Kim?
Do not sign documents from people that knock on your door, claim to help you with your insurance claim, unless they're a public adjuster. And if they are a public adjuster, make sure they got good references, look them up just like anybody. So,
and you want to find out too whether they're licensed.
That's
you hear
correct.
the song coming on now? It's Rock You Like a Hurricane. So we prepare for hurricane season.
Oh.
Can you hear it?
I hear it.
All right. All right. Sorry. I gotta start and end it with a song. You gotta keep it lighthearted. We're talking about such amazing things as insurance and public adjusters.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It is so exciting. And woohoo, hurricane season's here.
It's necessary, though, because all this is academic until you have a claim. Then when you have a claim, oh no, what did Kim say? By the way, you can check out my website, is kmalawyer.com, if you want to get more information there too.
Oh,
so
what is it, KMA?
kmalawyer.com. Yes.
Lawyer.com. All right, I'm putting it up here as well. I think it'll go up there. So KMA Lawyer, if I did it right. Okay, well, cool. Hey, Kim, thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for being there and available for the public. And without saying, I need to have $1 from you first before I talk to you. Always giving first, and seeing, and then the money will roll in. That's how I believe, how I operate. And one last thing, I'm just going to throw it in here real quick, is that with what's going on right now, this came up a question: is riot and civil commotion, is that covered underneath homeowners policies? And I believe what I heard from an insurance person, they said it should be. But then again, what they need to have this checked by, they need to have. Go ahead. I know we talked about COVID and this as well. Go ahead.
Right. You need to review the policy for any of these things. So like the commercial policy holders, there was a lot of misconception that there'd be business interruption coverage for this COVID shutdown, and there really isn't. Unless it's a specialized policy, you know, and again, the caveat I give everybody who calls my office is I need to review your policy. But this is what I know from my general knowledge in 33 years in this business and reviewing tons of these different policies. But these policies keep changing. They change rapidly, and it wasn't like that when I first started out in this business. You had an HO3, it was an ISO form, it was standard. You know, I could pretty much tell you what was covered and what wasn't without reviewing it. That's not the case anymore. So riot and civil commotion, sometimes there's exclusions for it, sometimes not. You just have to read the policy. So,
and if you're a business owner, definitely check in it, because those are all a la carte from what I understand. I'm not an insurance person, but go ahead and talk to your insurance people. All right, lady, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and we'll be signing off here. And I really do appreciate you spending your time. And here, we'll leave us with a little bit of music as we wave goodbye, everybody.